that has been introduced in Sacramento. I am supportive of a lot of it, but the one thing I take away, the one bill I introduced, and I'm proud to be working with Anna on as well, is the farm worker housing bill. And very happy that when we passed out of the Housing Committee a couple weeks ago, chairman of that committee, David Chu from San Francisco, he said that he was supportive of the legislation, he was going to be a co-author, because out of Housing Committee, when, we work with people that have the answers to everything. I don't have the answers to everything, neither does Anna. But we're in a unique position because we come from a different part of the state, where, we can talk about our experiences representing, I know Anna represents 6 counties, I represent parts of 4 counties, multiple cities. We have colleagues from Los Angeles that represent neighborhoods. And so, but the interesting thing is we are outvoted in Sacramento because we just don't have the representation, in Sacramento from our region here in the state. I mean, it's myself, Anna, Bill Monty, Mark Stone, and even in our region here, we have major differences. Coastal versus the inland challenges we face. But what I appreciate what Mr. Chu said about our bill was often when the Housing Committee is debating important housing legislation, it always comes from the perspective of the solution for urban and suburban California, but rarely do we talk about legislative solutions for the rural parts of the state when it comes to housing and for our agricultural communities. And so that's why I'm very proud to I've been working with all stakeholders on this farm worker housing bill. And the most challenging part of it is, as Anna will say as well, is the politics behind any piece of legislation. Is trying to bring, 2 groups together, whether it's labor and UFW in this case, and agriculture that historically have been at odds on almost every issue, and trying to bring them together. I had agricultural people not even knowing what our bill attempted to do, just saying, hey, UFW's helping you, that's a problem. But for me, it's not about these different stakeholders. It's very important to reach out and to work with all of them as we have. But at the end of the day, it's about housing. It's about people. It's about, this is all good policy should be driven by data. And the data is here in the Salinas Valley, this farm worker housing study that was released in June 2018 that talks about a humanitarian crisis we have right here in the Salinas Valley. People living in terrible conditions, overcrowded conditions, in these terrible units. Monterey County leads the state in student homelessness. 12 schools in Monterey County, 1 in 5 students are homeless. Sherwood Elementary School, 40% of the students are classified as homeless. It's ridiculous. And so certainly making sure that we advance policies that are going to make a difference is something I'm very interested in. And I was, to close, one bill in particular, I'm a member of the local government committee, and there was a bill, AB 891, that was introduced to the committee, and this is what the bill would do. It would require large cities in each county by June 2022 to establish safe parking locations with outside bathrooms, with the appropriate the facilities, and to have security on site for individuals and families to live in their vehicles. And my colleague Richard Bloom leaned over and said, this is ridiculous, that we're talking about accommodating spaces for people to live in their cars. And that's why it's so appalling. I was in my hometown of San Benito, and the mayor there, Ignacio Velasquez, is talking about a moratorium. And I told him it's on building. In my opinion, it's the wrong approach. It's the wrong approach because, as I mentioned, by saying no to growth, when you have a legislature that is eager to solve this problem, a governor that is committed to solve, this is priority. You're giving Sacramento and other people that to solve the problem for us. But when I firmly believe in local control, in our ability to be able to make these decisions about growth, about adhering to our building on our identities, within our jurisdictions in our communities, and making sure that any growth really adheres to our values, as a community. And certainly when we talk about moratorium, it's like tell these kids that are living in overcrowded conditions with strangers why we need a moratorium. It's just really the wrong approach. So
I think the challenge is that is in our state is probably the biggest crisis that we face right now. It is estimated in their various reports it's between 1 million to 300 million units are what is needed. And the mortgage crisis really put us in a hole because there hasn't been development in many communities at all for the past 12 years. But I want to be a little bit controversial. I have a couple of bills that I'm working on. Let me tell you very briefly about them. And I agree with what Assemblyman Rivas had to say about, you know, it breaks my heart that we're looking for ways to be able to allow people to live in their vehicles. But I will tell you, I was approached, it's a season and a half ago, a year and a half ago, because it was rainy then, and I was approached by a group of veterans that had vehicles, but no place to live. And they were being moved all over the county because they were staying in unincorporated areas and they didn't have some place to stay. And so they had found a space, they wanted to see if I would help. It ended up, it was UC Santa Cruz's piece of property out on the Marina Airport. There were no neighbors, there was water and electricity there, and we couldn't get the university to cooperate with us to allow them to stay temporarily. They would run, you know, a group of them together. They'd set up a government, if you will, and police it themselves. We couldn't find a place. And I worked with Judge Phillips on it because he had taken a look at some of the properties out in Fort Ord, and there were some properties that made a lot of sense. And we tried to propose that we cooperatively do something together, and we just couldn't get the local governments to agree because it's property in their jurisdiction. And so I guess if I want to put a pin on it, is what you can do is that we desperately need your help to convince every single community in Monterey County, and if you also are in Santa Cruz County, that every community has a responsibility. So right now there's a project that's being proposed out on Laurel, and it'll be 100 units, and the Creek Bridge neighborhood is up in arms. And I walk regularly, and I get stopped every day to ask me what my position is and why I don't get involved. And it's a local government issue, and frankly, I think it belongs there. But I told the council members, you ought to be planning something in every single district. Every single district, because then you take the wind out of people complaining about how and it makes it a lot easier. The most hotly contested meetings that I ever chaired were meetings around affordable housing when I was mayor. And some of it is a fear of property values. Some of it's just fear of those people. And quite frankly, they're already here. It's not like those people are going to go anywhere. They're our neighbors, right? They're our neighbors. And so my concern is that what ends up happening is that the communities, it's my opinion, the communities that have blue-collar workers understand the responsibility and build. Salinas, when I was on the council, built almost 2,000 affordable housing units in all price ranges. And in many instances, the county came on right next to us and built more. And so we need to make sure we're spreading it out everywhere. And we're not just putting it in the Salinas Valley and then not putting it anywhere else. But what I'm working on are a couple of things. Let me just also say that there's a recognition, and Robert's right, our new governor is we're trying to figure out where he's coming from and what he wants to see. And so we'll have more information by the end of the year because we'll have interacted with his staff and with him as well. But he is totally committed to creating more affordable housing units. And the key here is are the resources. So we've passed a number of initiatives and funding sources for us to be able to create a permanent source of money to be able to build. But we can't, you know, it's ludicrous because to build 100 units is $50 million. It's like, you know, how would we ever catch up with how far back we are? So we're gonna have to look at new ways of doing things. We've got to figure out how do we fit people within the existing footprint so that we're not building out on agricultural land. Because if you're concerned about greenhouse gases, quite frankly, every acre of land that you convert into an urban use creates 58 times more greenhouse gas emissions. And so we can get all the electric cars we want and then start building on ag land and those emissions are gone. So it's important to recognize kind of how this all works together. We need smaller units, we need them more affordable, we need higher densities, we need to build up, not out, and that means every community needs to do that. So when you hear somebody cheer that they got 2 affordable housing units in their community, it isn't enough. It just isn't enough. And I look at the nonprofit community as the moral compass of the community. You do God's work. And if you're going to do that work, you got to get out there and talk about how important it is that we house people that are actually maintaining the economy in our community. Yes. These are people that are working. As Robert said, it's not